So, car selling has long been seen as one of the most boring, stressful consumer experiences, but it doesn't have to be so. In this fireside chat, Naomi Walkland, CMO of Motorway, and, oh, that's wrong on my notes, and Dan Hauck,
very good,
Exec Strategy Director and Partner of 21stCenturyBrand. Thank you. I think I had your partner. It was previously in my notes, but I'm so pleased to have you here, and I've pronounced your name correctly. Hurrah. They were here to discuss how the fast-growing used car marketplace reimagined the process through a bold brand campaign that challenged category norms and brought unexpected joy to the journey. So in our next session, how to make boring brilliant, they will explore how a clear strategy, emotional storytelling, and sharp creative thinking turned a functional product into something people could feel good about. This is a story of making the dull delightful, with valuable lessons to gain for anyone looking to inject meaning, emotion, and standout branding into even the most traditional of categories. Naomi and Dan, welcome.
Thanks,
welcome,
Emily.
welcome.
thank you. Okay, cool.
Let's go.
This is fun. I like being in control.
I know, this is good, this is good.
I get to ask the questions, which is good. Okay, first question, Naomi. So let's start with the problem. Why do you think selling a car has historically felt so dull, so daunting, and even anxiety-inducing for customers?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to know how many people in the audience actually think car selling is fun. I'd just be intrigued. One person.
One person. Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that is reflective of the majority, and I'm glad you're smiling. But over two-thirds of car owners in the UK find the whole process of car selling daunting. So this is a big transaction, one that many people are spending thousands of pounds on, but the feeling that many people feel is stress, or even worse, anxiety. And it's a transaction which is done around key moments. So it could be a family move, it could be your family's expanding, you could be going to university and so forth. But the feeling that many people feel is just indifference. They don't find it an enjoyable process. It doesn't feel like a choice. It almost feels a bit like a chore. And that's exactly what Motorway and what we did and started 7 years ago was flip this on its head. We created an experience which was taking away all of these challenges, the complexity, to really seamlessly help people sell their car and buy their car in the UK. And we've actually managed to take it from complex to awful to actually even enjoyable. And that's a little bit about what Dan and I are going to talk about. And Dan and I have had the pleasure of working together for the last year on our brand strategy. And one of the hardest bits when I joined Motorway last year was, how do we deal with this really tough tension, but also create a really interesting value prop? So, Dan, I'd be intrigued about how did you help us solve this?
Okay, great intro. So we did a bunch of customer research, and we got a very clear story that for something that's so important in your life, for a lot of people it's very stressful, anxiety-inducing. The industry is all set up for people that know what they're doing, basically. They enjoy it, like the guy over there. They know what the price should be, they like doing the research, they look forward to haggling, that kind of thing. But actually, that leaves out a huge chunk of people that find the whole process pretty, if not scary, just a bit daunting and something they don't really want to do. So that gave us a clear problem to solve as a brand. And then the next stage was to go, okay, what is it about Motorway that feels so different? Because what we heard through customer reviews and Trustpilot and things like that is people consistently play back, it just feels totally different. It just feels like a much better experience. And when we dug into it, it was that you have lots of questions when you're trying to sell a car. How should I describe it in the posting? What's a good price? What documents do I need? What do I do if they try and haggle? Who's going to pick it up? And what Motorway does is it sort of clears the fog of all of that. It gives you all the information you need at the right times so that you know what's going to happen. And then we went, okay, that's quite functional. What's the emotional thing that sits behind that? What's the big thing that we can tie onto? And that was confidence. It was all about confidence. It was confidence that you're going to get a price that you like. So the only way to buy and sell a car with confidence was the value proposition. Confidence you'll get a good price, confidence you're not going to get ripped off, people aren't going to try and scam you, that they're going to turn up on time. Very clear emotional benefit of confidence, and that we felt gave us a really good platform then to be taken through into the campaign development and bring the idea of confidence to life in the most engaging way that could be done. Another question of mine.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the creative. It's not magic, it's Motorway. It was a bold, unexpected, joyful campaign. Can you just give us a bit more insight? What was the brief for the campaign, and how did you ensure it wasn't just different, but it was also distinctive and effective?
Yeah. So our campaign, It's Not Magic, It's Motorway, launched at the end of March, and the brief was simple. Really, it was help us showcase the simplicity behind the value that we bring and help us drive preference. And I think it's really important as marketers to look at preference, because preference is so much harder to achieve. And so we're really focused on how can you showcase the value that we bring. So the great technology, the dealer network that we have who buy your cars, and also the customer experience. So we kept our brief really, really simple. And what we did with the work that we did at 21st Century Brand is, as part of our brand strategy, we actually landed on an archetype. And our archetype was the bold magician. And really, that bold magician was us personifying ourselves a little bit like a brand. So we're innovative, we're disruptive, we're forward-thinking. And what we did with our brief is we leveraged that archetype to bring that to life. And so with It's Not Magic, It's Motorway, what we're basically saying is our process is so seamless. You get a great price, you get great customer experience, and you typically get more for your money. And it feels like magic, but it's not. It's Motorway. And so we kept it really simple. We made sure that it was bold, it was disruptive, it was clear for our customers. But one thing that we did is we didn't just try and be different for the sake of it. And I think that's really important. We actually based our differentiation on our insights, what our customers have been saying, and also our business strategy as well. And I think the last bit was we were really clear around what do we want to achieve with this platform. This is not just a one-hit wonder and we kind of leave it as that. This is something that we wanted to build over time as well.
Great, and it's such a great campaign. I'm glad to hear that you're looking to make it consistent over time, because that's obviously how you build really clear associations with consumers in their minds. Okay, next question. So you've spoken about starting with commercial outcomes, not just channels or media. Can you share how that mindset of starting with commercial outcomes shaped this brand relaunch, and then also some of the business impact that it's delivered?
Yeah, definitely. I think one clear thing that some of my team are here and some of my former team are here, so they'll know this very well, but the thing that I always say is around making sure as marketers we are so clear on the impact we're driving. Our role as marketers is, one, to be the voice of our customer, but also to move your business forward. And so there's a couple of things that we did when we were thinking about the results of this, but one was, and it's one thing that I always say, which is position with emotion and prove with performance. So what I mean by that is lean into the customer insight, but be really clear on your outcomes. And we were really clear that this was not just an awareness-driving campaign. That was one factor of it, but we wanted it to be full funnel. We wanted to make sure that our brand strategy, our new product, our refreshed brand was not just making people more aware of Motorway, but they were actually moving down the funnel. And the second part of it was take your partners on the journey. Cross-functional relationships are so, so key. So we had our product team, our customer experience team, our finance team, all functions fully aligned to this strategy, because this was a unified cross-functional strategy. And I often joke with my CFO, but my CFO can speak as eloquently around the brand campaign as I can, and that's because she was a partner in this. Every decision, we were clear around our outcomes. So be really crystal clear around what you're achieving, what you're planning to do, and also make sure you've got a really good, robust measurement plan against this. So the campaign's been running for the last few months. One is we have driven awareness, we have driven a step change in consideration and intent, but ultimately we've also brought customers through the funnel to start driving that revenue as well. So I always say be really clear, what is the return on investment? And that can be both in the short term and also the long term. But clarity is so clear. And in a time when so many marketers are kind of fighting for budgets, we're really getting squeezed on the short term. Being crystal clear on what you're trying to achieve is just so paramount.
I love that. Start, position with emotion, What's the second half?
Lead with outcomes.
Love that. I love that. That's so good.
Great memory. But also, similarly, I think one of the things that was really helpful working with you was that you've really helped so many brands who are functional and driving a lot more relevance. So I think it'd be really helpful to share a little bit about your insight too.
Great. So all the work that we do at 21stCenturyBrand, so we're a brand strategy agency, and whether that's for people like Pinterest or Airbnb or Monzo or Motorway, a lot of what we do, we spend a lot of time getting to the core customer tension at the heart of any category. What's the big thing that's not being solved in that category, and how can this particular brand solve that tension? So for example, with Pinterest, the work we did, the tension was all about how social media is, a lot of the platforms are inherently negative, they're competitive, they're sort of anxiety-inducing, and that people wanted a positive space on the internet where they didn't, encounter that. Pinterest, in comparison, it's not about getting validation from others, it's not about looking to the past, it's about inspiration for the future, and it's about positivity and looking ahead. And that felt like a really clear sort of juxtaposition between those two. So tension, clear difference. Airbnb, so the tension there was that tourism was kind of cookie cutter, and you go to the same places, same hotels, same beaches. What Airbnb can do is give you a unique experience because of the type of property, or because of the host helping you in different ways. So there was a clear problem, repetitive tourism, and then a distinct sort of experience being different. And then lastly, Monzo. We've done a lot of work with over the last couple of years, and the tension there was that even though money is incredibly important for all of us, fundamentally we don't really like thinking about long-term money planning. So one stat we had was that people would rather spend their time scrubbing their bathroom than thinking about their long-term finances, which is wild, really, if you think about it. And what Monzo do brilliantly is they take something that could be really boring, quite heavy, and they just make it more engaging, more fun, and just something that you don't mind spending time doing, fundamentally. So that was the strategy, and then it led to the campaign last year, which is Money versus Monzo. So all about showing these are the bad parts of money, Monzo does it differently, and trying to land that idea. That was it?
Yeah, it's really interesting around that as well. It all helped us. Good.
Okay. Is that me?
Yes.
Yes. So, if someone's sitting in the audience thinking, this all sounds great, I hear what you're saying about making engaging work, but actually my category is fundamentally isn't sexy, is functional. What's your advice for unlocking emotion and creativity and growth where others just see functionality?
Yeah. I think first thing to start is I don't believe there's any such thing as boring brands. I think there's boring strategy and there's boring execution, but there's no boring brands. I definitely believe that there's something in every single brand. I think the key thing is, one is making sure you lead with emotion, as I said, and land with outcomes. Don't forget the importance of customer insight, and then also balancing that with the commercial impact that you're driving. The second is just stay human. We did not try and jazz up car selling. As seen when I first asked that question, only one person in the room found it joyful. We were not trying to convince everyone that this is the most amazing process. We stayed really, really human, and I think that relatability really helped as well. And then the third thing is, with creativity, how I always think about it is your creative should inform your strategy, and your strategy should be guided by your customer insight. And when you blend that together, that's where the real magic happens as well. So as you're thinking about creativity, really balance the role of the customer, really balance the role of the customer insight and the emotion coming together to create something really powerful. So those are my 3 tidbits. And as I said, there's no such thing as a boring brand. There's so much work and magic that can be found in every brand. And same question to you.
Well, I don't think I'm going to beat that.
Oh, that's good.
I would say even in the most functional category, there's always a tension that you can go and solve. So that might be fear, it might be boredom, it might be inertia, it might be lack of engagement. There'll be something there that's a fundamental tension and problem that can be solved. Spend your time looking for that, and something that isn't being talked about by one of your competitors, find that. And that's a really good place to start to make your category engaging. And as part of that, being boring, the opposite of boring doesn't mean necessarily wacky. It's not that you have to be fun and crazy. Like you say, like, there's no point saying that car selling is fun to most people.
That would be a lie.
Yeah, but the opposite of boring can also be profound. It can be emotional. It could be being serious. It could also be being fun and joyful. But if it's based on a real truth and a real tension, people will be engaged and it won't be boring. If it's based on something ephemeral and not fundamentally that's something that really resonates with people, then in its own way, however fun it is, it probably will be boring. So find the real tension. Okay, I think we've got time for one more.
Yeah.
Looking at you, have we got time for one more?
Got one more, should it?
Or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So just this about what's next. So it's been an amazing year for Motorway, huge opportunity ahead. So just advice for other brands as well, based on what you're doing next. What are you thinking about for the next step? How do you continue disrupting and delivering results?
Yeah. I think the key thing for us is we've just launched our campaign, so we're still in early days, so it's great to see the results and the growth that we've driven. But as I said at the beginning, this platform is not just a one-hit wonder and one and done in that sense. We're really planning on bringing that to life. So we've got a lot more work that we're doing on our product to bring our product experience to life through this new brand. We've got more activity of our brand campaign as well. And so there's a lot more that we're planning to do over in the last year. But one thing that we've done after this first initial burst is, what have the results been? So we spent a lot of time as a marketing team thinking, okay, have we moved the needle? What more can we do? So we're using a bit of a burst strategy where we're pulsing on and off between our marketing activity. And during that time, we're really understanding, has it worked? What hasn't worked? How can we make this more effective? And informing the next burst of our strategy. But it's not magic, it's at Motorway, it's our new brand platform, and one that we hope to continue for many years as well.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we're done.
You've done. Have you asked all your questions? Because
Yes.
I have one question from the floor.
Yeah.
There may be more if I open it up. So I'll ask you this one and see, and keep thinking, guys. So what advice would you give to a functional professional services brand who know they can create and lean into emotion, but the leaders of the business don't feel the same way and it gets diluted?
Yeah, it's tough.
It's a
Do you wanna
stakeholder
start?
management question, I guess, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's tough. I think one thing that I've always adopted, because it is hard, when you as a marketer are trying to be that voice of the customer and that's not always being valued, one thing that I've always tried to is, one, get really curious about your stakeholders. What's fundamentally blocking them from understanding that? That could be that in the past they've had bad experiences when leaning into more emotionally driven campaigns. It could be that they're under tremendous pressure from a financial perspective. But first is get really curious to really understand the why behind their frustrations. The second part is, and it comes back to taking people on the journey, is it's baby steps. And I always say it's a little bit of kind of crawl before you can walk, before you can run. Sometimes as marketers, we can see what we need to do and we want to get there really quickly, but it is a stage of crawl. So what can you do in the short term, which is a little bit more emotive, get the results, prove the effectiveness, and go back and say, okay, let's ramp it up a little bit. But I think that get curious of really understanding why there is frustration, feedback around not leaning into emotion is so key. And then that crawl, walk, run strategy is always a good one that I adopt.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's about leaning into what their concerns are, getting close to them, understanding them more, and then hoping to
Then
let
coming
them
up with a
understand
solution.
you more. Exactly
100%.
that. I have another question. Which other brands in traditionally boring categories do you think do a great job in marketing, apart from, you've already said Monzo, any others?
You take that one, yeah.
That should be.
That are boring but do a great job.
No, that they're doing a great job. Other brands in traditionally boring categories that are doing a great job in marketing.
Oh, God. I think I would say there's a lot of investment going into B2B and sort of SaaS and that whole world. And there are some brands in there in spaces that should be really boring, like Salesforce and things like that, that are actually doing amazing marketing and doing incredibly well. Slack, I would say, is another one. LinkedIn. So I think that's a space that used to be quite stuffy and sort of suits and business. And now they're behaving like consumer brands. And that's
You are seeing so many B2B brands actually borrowing a lot of the tropes of consumer brands, which makes total sense because ultimately we're all people.
Yeah, it's like this idea that we sort of go to work and we put on a sort of boring boring hat, and it's sort of like, that's not really how human beings work. So I think that has been a big change in the last decade, I would say.
Great example. Any other questions for the last minute?
We've got a number one fan who enjoys car selling.
You. You said that you were obviously relying on your customers' experience and the way they feel about car selling, et cetera, et cetera. Presumably, your future is expanding maybe in Europe and different countries. How are you going to try and tackle leaning onto all those? Because car selling is very country dependent. Everybody's got their own process and stuff like that. How are you going to, expand the brand whilst keeping, your tone of voice and all of that?
Yeah, didn't hear that quite, so you might need Emily to...
We expand out into other markets in Europe. And what I gleaned is, how do you repeat the model in other parts of Europe when the car...
How do you manage many different markets and maintaining consistency given the differences of the category in different markets and differences of customers in different markets? How do you manage that consistency?
Yeah, so it's always a tough challenge. And we're currently just in the UK at Motorway, but previously I led the marketing internationally at Bumble, and we were across 15 different markets. And I think the key thing, and I always go back to it, but what is a human insight? So when it was around dating in the UK was so different, even regionally, than it is as a country. And so we really leaned into that customer insight. Similarly, dating in France was different to Germany as well. So starting with that customer truth, what can you keep as core central brand assets, and then giving agency and autonomy to flex that, to bring that to life, is just a kind of key framework that I've always adopted.
Amazing stuff, guys. Thank you so much. Can I have a massive round of applause, please?
Well done, you.
Thank you, guys.